This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Rock and Roll Denim, Bill Fick Ford, the WCRA, and Resistol.
Attention all rodeo athletes. Join us for the Cowtown Christmas Championship Rodeo in December. Over $360,000 in prize money in the historic Cowtown Coliseum in Fort Worth, December 14th through 17th. And no entry fees. Qualify using the VRQ for the Triple Crown of Rodeo $1 million cash bonus, featured on a CBS network broadcast. To get started, go to the App Store, download the WCRA Rodeo app, and hit nominate. This is your chance to rodeo in December. Nominate today or visit us at WCRArodeo.com.
Guys, another year has ticked by, challenging year, but there was somebody you could rely on if you needed a new Super Duty pickup, and that was Bill Fick Ford. Once again, the #1 Super Duty dealer in the entire country. You guys have seen what's going on in the car business, in the truck business. You're seeing trucks being sold for thousands above MSRP. Well, if you go to Bill Fick Ford, it doesn't matter where you are at in the continental U.S. He will take care of you. He will stand by the product, and he will not take advantage of you. Guys, Bill Fick Ford is the only place you can go in 2022 for a no-bull discount. Bill Fick Ford.
What sets Resistol apart is the legacy of the cowboys who wear the brand. These traditions are passed down from fathers to sons, from heroes to future champions. Since 1927, Resistol has been handcrafting the finest American-made cowboy hats. Generation after generation, we live it every day.
Lonesome Rider Coffee Company is a veteran-owned, family-operated business started in 2019 in San Diego, California. Lonesome Rider Coffee is committed to helping the community by sponsoring several youth sports leagues, high school athletic programs, multiple veteran nonprofits, and they've created fundraising campaigns to raise donations for breast cancer all year long. Lonesome Rider Coffee is sourced directly from coffee farms all around the world. Their coffee is roasted per order in small batches without harmful additives or artificial flavors. Lonesome Rider Coffee Company believes that the best tasting drinks must come directly from the earth, from organic and sustainable sources. This allows their customers to receive the freshest and most delicious coffee directly to their mailbox or on the shelves. Visit LonesomeRiderCoffee.com to check out all their different blends, including their 6-shooter dark roast blend. That's LonesomeRiderCoffee.com.
This is The Gauge with host Chance Conradou.
Are you freaking serious? It's Conrado. This is The Gauge, and I am Chance Conrado. On this episode of the podcast, we've got my man Charly Crawford. Charly is a 10-time NFR qualifying team roper, and he's just an awesome guy, a sharp guy. Him and his wife are some of the best people on this planet, truly. And they've got this military roping, American military celebration that's happening on November 4th, and it's at Cowtown Coliseum, and it's a truly amazing event. And this is a great episode. Check it out. What is that, an iPhone like 3?
I'm not sure. It's got some age on it.
It looks like it's got a little age on it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a case on it either.
I've been working on getting enough time to go get a new one. And
they make it a pain in the ass. That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's like they don't want you to buy a new phone.
I enjoy the marketing. That's good marketing. You're eligible for an upgrade. That is genius.
It is.
Even my kids, look, I'm eligible for an upgrade. I can get a new one. No, this is another way of saying you paid it off.
Yep, exactly.
But great marketing, by the way.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I mean, you're right. There's so much to learn from a guy like that, and you know, it's like what they say: don't make a mistake that somebody else has made. Mm-hmm. You know, if you can learn from somebody else's mistakes or their victories and actually use it's a big deal, but most people can't.
It's a big problem with this country right now. There's not a whole lot of history getting taught, and so we're repeating a lot of mistakes that shouldn't have never been being made right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, there's a incentive to burying real history. But, I mean, look, those who want to find stuff out, you can. You can do it on this phone if you want to. You can go download books. Like, you can learn it or teach yourself pretty much anything you want. And you can also learn anything from the past if you know where to look.
Well, that's why I think you guys have done such a good job with your show, is presenting people a lot of different information, and with all the interviews that you guys do to were the successful people that are in, you know, all these different events, so called.
Yeah.
You know, you're getting so much knowledge on this show, just how guys was either how they was successful to where it matches up with your personality. Where, man, if that guy, that kind of relates to me, man. If he got successful doing this, is kind of cool. Where he has a blueprint, and this is,
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of the times when I listen to this show, it kind of sparks that creativity right there of
It does.
if anybody that's wanting to be successful. You
Yeah.
know, sometimes what you're needing is just a little bit of that creativity to get going.
You do, because sometimes, like, and I don't know if you were like this. Maybe you are. I mean, I think you are, because you to choose the path that you chose and the work that goes into being that level, especially in roping. I mean, and to make it to the finals multiple times. I mean, you have to crave success to want to go down that hard path. And we should talk about that, kind of some of your motivators and a little bit about your past. But you're right. Like, you really have to crave something. And I don't think a lot of people take advantage of all the free information out there.
I agree.
So I wish they did. Probably be a better world.
Like I said, it's been great to follow what you guys are doing with this show. And I, you know, when I was a kid growing up, team roping, or it was back then, it was spin to win.
Yep.
You know, when I think I won my rookie of the year when I was 18 or something like that in 96 or 98, excuse me. And, you know, then I'm like, all right, after that, NFR, baby. Mm-hmm. It's not how it worked. There was a lot of beating your head against the wall and struggles and learning curves and this and that. And, you know, every team rope or spin to win back then, every article that came out that this guy had, you know, when they always asked the question, learn how Frank Graves made his first NFR. And I'm like, what is it? You know, what am I not doing that this guy did?
Right.
And so, you know, back then it was harder to find that information because you're waiting for an article to come out and see
Right.
it. But, you know, it's like you say now, there's so many success stories out there with, you know, the Gauge or YouTube or things like that it's a lot easier to find it, for sure.
It is, yeah. And, you know, and, well, that's the cool thing about the rodeo world. That's why I love the rodeo world and will never be out of the Western world ever, no matter what, is because you want to be a football player, and I'm sure I've said this 100 times, or a baseball player. Like, good luck finding someone who's done it that you could even sit down with.
No lie.
If you want to be a top tier header or healer, man, some dude who's done it's going to let you on his place,
Right.
and let you rope or do stuff with you, or at least give you his time.
That was the one good thing about rodeo, and it definitely taught me how to be self-employed. Mm-hmm. You know, I had to learn how to market myself. I had to learn how to sell myself. I had to learn how to get sponsors. I had to learn how to be self-driven. You know, you're out there in the practice pen 8 hours a day. You ain't getting paid for it. You know, you're investing in yourself that when you do nod your head at the rodeo that this is going to pay off. And so a lot of similarities between being self-employed and learning how to rope for a living.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's true. And I think the biggest lesson that you can learn, whether that you being an entrepreneur or wanting to start a venture or wanting to pro rodeo or anything else, is you don't pay your current self. Like, you're paying your future self by spending that time. You know, all those hours in the arena that you didn't make a dime and you're sweating your ass off, and, you know, even just riding 10 or 12 different horses a day or whatever the hard thing you have to do right now is. It's like, you're not paying yourself now. Like, I know you're not making money right now, but you in the future, that guy, that's the dude who's going to benefit from this. Mm-hmm. And people, I don't think people think about it that way.
Well, it's like it's self-employed. What most businesses don't take off until 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot of breaking even for about the third year.
It's a lot of sacrifice. And even then there's no guarantees.
Yeah.
I mean, how many guys do you know who can rope like the freaking devil and they've never made it to the NFR?
I know. Yeah. There's a lot of mind control or self-discipline, and the mental game of it's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. When was it that like you were able to kind of put the whole puzzle together?
You know, it from, I guess, I won Rookie of the Year in 98. And then after that, I was trying to find my own path. I was trying to find, I could rope good and I could ride good, but I had no idea that I didn't know how to win still. Mm-hmm. I won, but I won just enough to kind of not quit. But then in the same sense, I was kind of spinning my wheels at the same time. It's kind of like that saying when you're trying to paddle upstream. You can be rowing your ass off, and you look over and you ain't gone nowhere. That's basically what I was doing. You know, I was working my rear off, just trying to gain something. It wasn't. And I tell you, who helped me turn the boat around was Tyler Magnus. Probably in 2002, he offered me a job. I was rowing with Bucky Campbell at the time, and got cut that winter. And we were staying at Tyler Magnus's place. Well, the same day I got cut, we were out there practicing, and he goes, "What are you gonna do now?" I don't know. I guess figure out how to get home, I guess, and reevaluate, restructure. He goes, "Well, the guy that I got working for me that rides all my head horses and turns me steers all day, that shoes all my horses, he quit." Well, that was my wellhouse. That's why I shod horses and rode horses. That's when I was rodeo, and I'd actually haul. Sometimes I'd take a lot of my outside horses with me. Mm-hmm. So that paid my gas at the end of the month, because I got paid for riding colts at the end of the month. And then when I would shoe, that'd pay for my truck payments and my fees. And then when I would win, that's when I kind of got ahead. And so that was always kind of my structure of surviving. That was my survival mode.
Yeah.
Well, then when he offered me a job, I was like, well, that's right down my wellhouse right there. I can ride horses and shoe and kind of get my feet back on the ground. And he said, you know, I'll take you to all the places that T. Woolman doesn't go to, because Tyler Magnus rode with T. Woolman at that time. Mm-hmm. And this Tyler Magnus would go now. Holy smokes. There's rodeoing for a living, and then there's Tyler Magnus. Like, we hit every punk and roller jackpot. I mean, I remember being in one jackpot one time where there was chickens coming across the arena. I'm like, boy, you talk about backyard. We were at a backyard jackpot. I think we were at like 7 jackpots within 3 days or 4 days or something. 7 jackpots and rodeos all together. And he threw me in the rig. I rode his horses. He paid my fees for half, and he showed me how to win. Showed me how to kind of structure and put it together. And I think about that time, everything was always focused on the NFR. And when I got done with that, after that I left, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I need to back down a little bit. I've never won the amateur associations at home. I've never won the circuit at home. Mm-hmm. Well, if I can't do that, there's no way I'm going to be able to compete with these guys. So I kind of backed my goals back down a little bit. And when I left his place, went back home, won both amateur associations for the first time. Dang near won the circuit. I think it was the next year I ended up winning the circuit. And kind of started getting a little bit of confidence, a little bit, just trying to emulate that. Well, then as soon as I get done winning the amateur associations, I'm right back to his house. I'm just like a sponge at that point. Mm-hmm. Finally found the guy that could kind of help mold me and mentor me, and that was already successful. At the time, he was one of the best clinicians and horsemen and ropers, both ends at the time. And so learning very early that the people you surround yourself with is going to really dictate where you go. And that's when I truly heard that.
Yeah.
That was the first time I seen it.
Really?
So, and then I think a few years later, I finally made my first NFR.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of percentage to him for that.
Really?
For me.
Mm-hmm. So you think that's the difference between being good and being able to do your job and actually being a winner? You think it's mentorship?
For me, it was. You know, there's some freaks out there like Speed Williams and Caleb Driggers that kind of blaze their own path, you know, and there's some guys right there that study it and they're just sharp-witted. But a lot of the things, too, is they had a strong work ethic and they're sharp. And, you know, Michael Jordan, he had talent and he worked hard. Those guys, Trevor Brazils, you know, those are the guys that are hard to beat when you have the talent and you work at it.
Yeah.
You know, my talent level, probably not real high. My work ethic was pretty strong. My ability to prepare got really well. Mm-hmm. You know, I'd set my boxes up to where I could set my boxes the same width and length at home. So when I'd enter San Antonio, I could call all the judges and find out what the score would be, what the measurements of the boxes were. And so I could practice rope in San Antonio 2 weeks before I even got there. Just the timing and the feel of everything. So the only thing that changed when I got to the rodeo was just the environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Crowds,
so things like
noise.
that. Yeah.
That takes a really unique person to be able to be disciplined enough to structure their lives that way or their preparation that way.
What I tell everybody is in my clinics is that, you know, I grew up roping in the 80s. I started professionally competing in the 90s. Well, Google in 1996 NFR and see what it looks like today. Mm-hmm. You know, no disrespect to the guys back then. That's just how much the game's evolved since then. You know, I studied those guys, the Matt Tylers, the Kevin Stewarts, you know, and then when Speedy showed up, and then he just completely changed the game. But those were the guys that I emulated and tried to practice like. Well, it didn't take too long before Speedy completely changed the game. Well, then now all of a sudden I'm tearing my roping back down and building it back up so I can still stay competing with the guys.
Yeah, talk about that for people who don't kind of realize that renaissance that happened in the team roping in the 90s. What changed?
Speedy Williams showed up.
Yeah.
Before that it was Jake Barnes. Jake Barnes was just a workhorse. I always thought of him as like Rocky Balboa. That guy he was a warrior, man. Still is. And they made so many runs they just never missed. And they were fast in the days too, but they were fast and they were consistent. And then Speedy showed up and just blew the doors off. I remember just watching the NFR and you watched him and it was like, that was so stinking fast and with the grain. Like, I've never seen that. I don't think at the time anyone ever seen that.
Right.
I mean, I still remember the first day when he showed up, and man, when I was a kid, my dad always told me when you ride in the box, you always turn toward the steer.
Yep.
Why? Well, them horses got to keep their eye on the steer. And that was like, back then, that's how it was done.
Oh, I remember, when I was
I questioned it to this day. I was like, it doesn't make sense because as soon as you turn them, they're
turning
looking
the other way.
Yeah, exactly. And then Speedy showed up and turned away from the steer. And I remember sitting watching the score in front of all the top guys in the world who were watching the bear start. And Speedy comes in and turns his horse the opposite way. And everyone went, oh, he doesn't even know how to turn his horse the right way in the box. And then he wins 8 world titles later. Then everyone turns his horses away from the box.
Right.
It was kind of funny because that was Speedy. He literally came in and just changed the whole game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
it was fun to watch.
It would have been cool to be like cognizant, really, of that sort of thing back then. I was really young, but
8 world titles in a row.
It's
hard enough to make the NFR 8 times in a row, and then that guy, him and Rich, just it was fast. It was amazing to watch it.
Was that one of the most inspirational things that you probably witnessed that set you where you were going to go? Do you think, or
man? What got me was when I was a kid, I lived 20 miles from St. Paul, Oregon, a little town called Canby, Oregon. And my dad roped pretty good, trained horses good.
He was training rope horses?
No, he just his own. He had a job. He was a lineman.
I guess back then you didn't train event-specific horses, really.
Yeah, he was a team roping fan. He was probably, even to this day, I would say he's probably one of the biggest team roping fans that I ever knew.
Yeah.
Loved it. Loved them guys. Well, he was really good friends with Mike Beers. And so my stepmom would go and she would film all the team roping runs. And we were one of the few people that had an arena around
area.
Those areas and stuff like that. And so the guys would go to slack at St. Paul that morning, and then they would hear that we had all the videos, and then she would cook. And then we had steers. Well, the team ropers, that's like, going to a jackpot and having rubber, beer, and Copenhagen in your rig. You're going to have friends.
Yep.
And so they all just come and hang out at the house. And so I got to watch guys like Jake and Clay rope, and they stayed at the house. And Leo Camarillo, I got to turn steers for him as a young kid. And, and so that just molded me into a fan. But the biggest thing was when Mike Beers, he would try to make the perf from Molalla to St. Paul. They have them staggered over the top of each other so you can make both of them. Well, then he would always kind of test the balance. He would see if he can make the calf roping and then the team roping at St. Paul and Molalla. Well, he was in my stepmom's car, and we'd jump in there, and as soon as he would rope, we would just,
book it.
Oh, when I'm talking about passing people on the right-hand side over the crosswalk to then the median, crossing people and just slamming on the brakes and sliding in and just maxing that car as fast as it would go on the straight stretch, passing people right there and come sliding into the rodeo at St. Paul, jumps over the fences, they're calling his name with the horse sitting right there, jumps on, goes and wins the round and takes a victory lap. Why would anybody else want to do anything else but be a cowboy? It's one of the coolest things I ever saw.
Yeah. Yeah. You really became a product of your environment.
Yeah. It's hard not to be a fan when you see that much adrenaline and success and, things like that. And my dad groomed me to be, he always wanted me to be a roper, and he loved it and stuff. So
really?
Yeah. So then just after that, and just learning how to put it together.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, what do you think the biggest, it's out of everything, there's talent, there's discipline, there's hard work, there's timing, there's all these different things you have to put together to be unique or special, if you want to use that phrase, and whatever your chosen thing is. But if you had to sit down and you had to put things in a bucket, right? You've got these buckets that you have to put all these things in. What one would you put the most stones in as far as that bucket goes?
I'd have to say work ethic.
Yeah.
Work ethic would have to come along. There's got to be some attitude in there too. Talent doesn't always have to be the common denominator. That's where a lot of guys end up having that talent, but then they don't work at it because they're relying on their talent. But, hard work coming along with some good attitude thrown in there and the right outlook on life, you're going to be successful in or out of the arena. It doesn't matter what you're doing, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, I mean, your attitude and being able to do the work, which is a hard thing for people to do right now. There's so many distractions.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what the sport's going to look like in 20 years.
I agree.
What's the next step with these things? I mean, you're going to be at this phone in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big gap there. You're way behind. But you got kids. What do you think is going to happen with your kids when it's their time?
I agree. With my wife breakaway and stuff, our little girl, I can already see her and my daughter, Cadence as well. The path is looking real bright for the breakaway future. I feel. And that's what Jackie and I sat and broke it down. I'm like, how much longer do you think it's going to be before, first of all, who decided to measure the ropes in the breakaway? At what standard is that? Because that's as far as you all can reach, or is that where it breaks in position? Because how much longer is it going to be before someone starts having a little bit longer rope and throwing faster? Just like
I've
the team
always
roping.
I've always thought about that. Who's actually making sure that there's a standard for that.
Because like my over-analytical career, my last NFR is I have a speed trainer at home, and so I have a Smarty at home, and so I would actually break the neck rope with the Smarty, and I'd ride my horse up to where the barrier was at the house, and I would measure from my saddle horn to where the neck rope broke. And so then that way, if the wind was blowing or it's too wet to rope or it's my horse need a break, I'd set up the speed trainer and the dummy right there to where at least I could get reps to where I knew the steer. If I got a good start, that's where the steer is going to be. So if I wanted to throw it the line, which I rarely did, but if I needed to, at least I knew what the gauge was for the amount of rope to let go. Mm-hmm. And I started telling her, I said, how much longer before I think that's going to start happening in the breakaway?
Yeah.
Why not have two coils right there where you can throw it the line? If you know how far that cast's going to be, if you got a good start, that's where I think when somebody figures that out, being fast is going to be stupid fast, I think. It's already getting fast as it is, but
yeah. I mean, if you can break it down, and that's a really unique thing. Like I'm sure other guys do it, but I've not ever sat down or been around people where they're coming at it from that scientific of a perspective. So I mean,
I enjoyed remember in football when you'd watch ESPN and they would have the science where it talked the velocity of the ball was coming at a certain trajectory at a certain speed, and it was cool just to watch how the breakdown was in football.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh man, how could a guy kind of not overdo it, but still keep it simple and kind of scientifically figure out where's the measurements on where these things are at, to where you can kind of still at least practice on the ground to where it's a little more realistic than just roping nonchalantly,
Yeah.
So I liked Michael Jordan where he talked about that last shot that he made as a
pro.
As Chicago Bull, when he drained that last shot against the Utah Jazz. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'd practiced that shot so many times. He says, when I stole the ball and got that ball back in my hands, he said, I knew exactly what shot I was fixing to make. He said, I made that shot so many times in the practice. He goes, all it was now is just execute.
Yeah.
And so practice has to be a lot like that. Otherwise, guy can sit and overthink a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how does one, especially you're clearly extremely analytical. It's not surprising that you might get along with Clinton like you had, and similar. But how do you, when you have an active mind like that, and you speak like somebody who has an active mind, because I'm not having to drag words out of you like a lot of people who rope for a living, but you know what I'm talking about. But I mean, how have you done that as far as in competition goes, where you're able to quiet your mind and actually utilize those reps?
That's what gave me the confidence.
Yeah.
That I put in the work, I put in the practice, so then that way I could turn it off. Because what I wanted to know is I wanted to make sure that I was prepared enough when I got there, that now once I nod my head, I can just react to whatever steer I have drawn, that I put myself in that situation. And that's how I felt confident.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. You're kind of moving into a new phase of your life, right? And I don't remember, you called me 6 months ago or something, kind of told me what you were doing. I think it was before you even had your consultation. But you've decided that maybe you're not going to continue to go down the road, right?
Oh, yeah. I retired in 2020.
Yep.
That was my last NFR.
Yeah.
I got to do, that was my dream. I mean, obviously I wanted to win the world.
Yep.
But I put in the time. I put in the effort. I made it way longer than I ever would have dreamed that I could have made it that many times. And, Jackie was pregnant with Journey at the time, and Breakaway was taken off. And it wasn't that hard of a decision, but at that point in time, I literally had the best horses that I ever had in my life.
Right.
One of the best partners that fit me so good that I've ever had.
Yeah.
But the same sense is like, you got to know when that whistle's being blown, in my opinion, because the one thing I wanted to truly make sure in my career was that I knew where the line was, and that I knew who I wanted to be. I wanted to be a good husband. I wanted to be a good father. And for Jackie to kind of be able to take off right there and do what she wanted to do, her stuff was taken off, for both of us be doing that, I just didn't see that being a fit that was going to be good for our family at all. And the main thing I wanted to truly make sure that I remembered was rodeoing was what I did. It's not who I was. And who I want to be and what I want to be was completely different. So I was always able to make sure that I did not want to let rodeo define me. Because in biblical terms, talk about false idols. Rodeo can truly be a false idol if you ain't careful, in my opinion, because the winning, the buckles, the crowd, the rush, all the things that go along with rodeo is a pretty good drug but it can turn into a drug if you let it. And so when I decided to back off, it was a pretty easy decision. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I did good with clinics, and I rode horses pretty good. And I thought that'd be a good way to start another career and stuff, because I've already did it. And then when I sold my horses and when I was done rodeo, and I invested in that in rentals, and so that I figured that was probably going to be the only retirement that I'd probably be able to create for myself, because to create a retirement rodeo is pretty tough if anyone's ever done that.
It's kind of a sad story. It's usually how that ends up.
And so that's where I went that route as soon as I was done, and I got all those complete. I think I got 6 rentals now, but man, the military deal that I've been doing is my way of like, all right, I got to compete for 40 until I was 42, made 10 NFRs, and after a while it gets exhausting that everything's about me. Every time that I go to a rodeo, I have to make sure all my stuff's loaded. I can't go to Jackie's deal because I have to do this. I can't do all these things. I can't be sometimes a friend that I wanted to be because I have to get ready for the NFR, whatever it was. It's just kind of nice to step away from that. And the military guys is something that me and Jackie decided in 2014. We ended up buying a group of guys, military guys was sitting next to us. We bought them lunch one time. And we were sitting there driving around, and we just kind of started brainstorming like, man, what could we do for guys like this who truly make it to where we get to experience everything we ever wanted to because of these guys?
People forget what their freedom is.
Mm-hmm. Especially, it's getting worse now, I feel. I'm sure my dad said the same thing when he was my age, but it truly feels worse now than I guarantee when he was bitching about it. But
yeah.
And so we decided to at least just put on some clinics there at the house just for military. Anyone who's ever served, it was free 2-day clinic, free plug-in, free stalls. And just one of those things where it's like, man, if the government ain't going to help take care of these guys, then hell with it. I'll do it myself. And so we started just trying to find ways and kind of help make them at least have a weekend where, they felt like they was getting something out of it, but mostly just feel appreciated. And so we started doing that, and by 2020, the thing just blew up. We were getting hundreds of phone calls for this 15 or 30 guy clinics we did at the header and the healing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I stepped away from rodeo, I'm like, well, at least finally now I can do something for other people. And in my opinion, what better way to do it than with these guys?
Yeah.
And so in 2020, Trey Johnson had helped me do this clinic probably 5 years before that. And he's really the one that truly did help this thing kind of get where it was more than a clinic, because he team roped really well, and he's an ordained minister, and he's one of my best friends, one of the greatest guys I've ever met. And he started helping a lot of these guys that were struggling with PTSD. And he started also helping a lot of these guys that were struggling spiritually. and I don't know how many guys that gave their lives to the Christ through this clinic, just from him helping them kind of understand sometimes what their meaning was. And so it turned into more than just a clinic for too long. And it was old school marketing. I mean, like, I put a post on my social media, hey, about that time for that military clinic. That was about it.
Yeah.
So the rest of it was just word of mouth. And so by 2020, we were getting hundreds of phone calls for it. And the guys would call and ask me, said, hey, man, have you ever thought about having a roping? And then the only downfall was that was my last NFR. I was like, man, I just want to make sure I'm ready for the NFR. My last one, I want it to be a good one. Mm-hmm. That was the only flaw. Other than that, it was just like, that was the only con I had. It was just kind of got my mind going, kind of got my, where could I do it? Oh my gosh, I could do this, I could do that. And so that first year, I think I had it with 30 days prep. Mm-hmm. Ended up having a military roping where the guys got to rope with each other, included the first responders. Mm-hmm. And then had a mil pro where the military guys got to rope with the guys going to the NFR that year. And then we had an NFR rodeo that night with 5 full rounds. The top 15 guys were going to the NFR that year, set the exact same measurements as the finals in Texas at that time. And so the guys never seen the NFR. They got to watch it live, and Cowboy Channel was there. And I think we ended up raising almost $50,000 that night for building homes for heroes. Ended up finding a remodel for a lady that was 100% disabled from the war, 3 weeks from being evicted with 8 kids, and was able to get her a home. And I was able to do that in 30 days. Man, give me 365 days. And so then that was last year, and we blew it out of the water. I think last year we raised over 115,000. People were donating food. We ended up feeding over 50 families, military and first responders that were in need. And it was amazing. But last year was the amount of guys that come up there, and this is kind of a slap in the face for me a little bit. This is one of the things that I kind of truly needed at the time in 2020 was after we did it, the amount of guys that come up and said that was the best day of their life. And wives crying in tears coming to me saying that they haven't seen their husband this happy since he came back. And it truly grounded me right then and there. I was like, man, we get to do this. Like, I get to rope for a living. All I did was I showed these guys what I get to do every day. And it was the best day of their lives. And I was like, gosh, dang, you talk about somebody who needed to hear that and be appreciative of what I get to do every day. And then the amount of guys, man, that come and told me this is going to keep them alive another year. You know, we've had a lot of guys right there that had the gun in their mouth and trying to find a reason to live. And we ended up having, last year had a police officer that was in Ferguson that said this would keep her alive for another year. And you know, it doesn't take too long right there to where, man, this thing got bigger than me. This thing got bigger than all of us. And the fact that, like, when me and Jackie was sitting there eating lunch trying to figure out what we could do for these guys. And then by 2022, seeing what we did, it was just amazing to see God kind of lead it and guide it to a way to where, you know, we're giving homes for people, feeding some of these guys, giving them experiences that they never would have thought. So last year I ended up having, we built the NFR arena in the NRS. Mm-hmm. And so when I had my NFR showdown, we had 20,000 out of the military first responder roping. Before when the rodeo started, we let the guys ride behind their branch flags in the arena, just like the NFR. When we got to ride behind our state flags, they got to ride behind their branch flags. And I had the short round in between the second and third round of the NFR showdown. And so they literally got to feel what it was like to rope with the Thomas and Mack. Same boxes, same setting. Had bleachers hauled in. It was live on the X Factor. This year's live on the Cowboy Channel. But they got to feel what it was like to rope in that size of arena for 20,000, which is more than a lot of these guys have ever probably roped for. And then especially for a military function. And we had fully tooled saddles, big checks, buckles. So they got, like, for me, it was like, all right, what can I show these guys that I got to experience while they're fighting for my freedom? And so, like, they literally, 15 teams got to feel what it was like to rope the NFR. And so, like I said, it sparked a lot of my creativity to where it's like, man, let me show you some of the cool stuff. We had a branding with these guys where they got to go gather some cattle and sort them and brand them and vaccinate them, and just some of the best memories I remember as a kid. And so it's been fun to be able to introduce these guys to the Western industry. This is a great industry. I tell them all the time, I say, man, I think the other sports have shit on you guys enough to where all the kneeling and bull crap that it was gone out. And welcome to the Western industry. We don't do that. We pray before every rodeo. We take our hats off. We stand for our national anthem. And the only one that ain't standing is either crippled or about to be. So It's not like the NFL or some of them other things.
That's why I don't watch those sports anymore.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. It's either a combat sport or it's rodeo. So they're the only ones who didn't do that.
Yeah,
that I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
Did they do it in hockey?
No, I think hockey's still pretty legit.
Yeah, but it's not as exciting, at least not for me to watch.
Yeah.
Some people like it, but...
Hail, son, if you're not wearing rock and roll denim, then you ain't no cowboy. I'm Dale Brisby, the greatest bull rider ever to live, and I'm known for keeping it 90. And I keep it 90 because I'm wearing rock and roll denim with reflex technology. They give me the flexibility I need to get that knee up. My biggest problem is I get an earache because I get my knee up so high, I kick myself in the ear. That's why I'm the greatest of all time. It's because of rock and roll denim, old son. Get you some.
It's interesting, like, hearing you talk about that and the transition and the going from self to service for others, which is what we're all called to do. I think we all fail at that, don't we? You know,
when I watched American Sniper, I truly became a Chris Kyle fan. And when he kept going out on tours and they kept asking him why, he's like, "Well, I got to fight for this country." And I said, "See all these guys in here? I think there's plenty of fighting you could do for them guys right here at your own." Right here, there's plenty of people that need help. And you could tell it kind of blew his mind a little bit. And we started taking those guys out there shooting. And when the guys kept saying, "Man, I feel like I got my balls back again." And I was like, "Man, you want to get your balls back again? Let me show you what it's like to rope the Thomas Mack. That'll get your blood rolling."
Yeah.
And so it kind of, like I said, some of my inspiration kind of came from watching how selfless that guy was and what he did for his guys. And it's like, I can do that. Obviously, it's not at what level he did, but I could do it with my event, I felt like.
I mean, yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea. I mean, when you were telling me about it and then saying, you know, I know it's coming up and what have you, but it is something special. And that's one of the reasons I bring so many military personnel on this show and have since we started it. And for whatever reason, people... they won't support. I mean, we had Mark Geist, who was literally the Secrets of Benghazi guy on this show. I met him at
Colorado Springs one year.
He's
really badass.
Really, really badass guy. And, you know, and for whatever reason, it's really hard to get people to support military. We can bring, and I mean, we're not just bringing on, you know, a Marine off the streets. We're bringing in Tim Kennedy's and Mark Geist and like real celebrity military heroes. And it is so difficult to get people to support that stuff. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it is that people don't want to look that in the eye?
I think a lot of it is that they're taught that in college. You know, I think some of the stuff that's been taught to our kids to hate America. What in the heck? I mean, that's, to me, that turned political to where now it's a talking point to hate. We're the best country in the world. We're the most free. We get to do anything we want. We get to pick who we choose to marry. We get to pick what job we want. You know, we got so much freedom right here. It's just amazing if you'd have put these guys in some of the places that they think is the greatest place, they'd be back within weeks.
Yeah.
And so it's sad that, like I said, my dad was a Marine, and I remember to this day when I was at a rodeo in Redmond and the circuit finals, and they let us all come in and walk in the middle of the arena for the national anthem, and me and one of my buddies was jacking around and during the national anthem, and I'm sure we were talking about something really productive, like where we were headed after the rodeo. And I turned my back to the flag, jacking with one of my buddies. Well, as I was walking out, my dad come walking down there, and he kind of had that march to him, like something was either wrong or I was in trouble already. And he came down there, he gave me the old finger pointing thing. Come over, he said, "Don't you ever turn your back to that flag again. Don't you ever do that. That's the most disrespectful thing you can do for this country." And I was like, I did do that. And it truly right then kind of grounded me as the fact that I didn't pay attention to that and realize what that stood for. And luckily I had a dad that did chew my ass right there and did line me out. Because what's hard for rodeo is because you go to 100 some odd rodeos a year and, you know, performances and stuff like that, and you get numb to the national anthem because it's everywhere you go. And so after a while you almost get saturated a little bit with the fact that it doesn't mean as much because it comes to you all the time, and then after that, no more of that. Like, hey, I don't care where I'm at. I'm standing. I'm trying to find the flag to face it, and you know. So at least I got that patriotic bone from my dad, and he instilled that in me. It's just sad that that's not taught as much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it truly is the opposite is taught, and it's a strange kind of thing when you've got opposite sides of whatever spectrum. It doesn't really matter, and they, for whatever reason, inherently just despise the thing that they benefit from. So the whole cut off your nose to spite your face thing. It is such a, and you almost can't blame them, right? Because it's just the most human thing to do. You know, you see people who don't prioritize their family and they prioritize everybody outside of their family, or people who won't prioritize their health, even though it's one of the only things they've got. I think it's just one of those inherent human things. And we're witnessing it play out in real time geopolitically, where, I mean, do you ever get caught down the loop of watching the kind of the videos where the interviewer will go ask these real simple questions about American history or world history, or they'll even just make up something real silly to see if they can get people to go along with it? We're all numb. We're all so numb to what's going on because we're so fixated on this thing of self that you can't even, you don't even know what year the Declaration of Independence was signed, almost, like your average person.
Yeah.
You don't know how many stripes are on the flag. You don't know, like, there's this one I watched the other day because the thing has been like, Christopher Columbus is an atrocity and all this. And it's like, well, maybe, but so was everybody back then, right? You can't hold them to the 2022 standard. They were shitting in the woods and they didn't even realize that the sun and the moon and the planets were what they are.
I agree. They were building it. They were helping get us to where we're at this point in time.
Yeah. So, I mean, just the way that people's minds work is, and I think the issue is they don't work any different than they used to back then. You remember when someone was a mathematician, a woman was a mathematician, she got burned as a witch, right? Something like that. I mean, that might not be exactly it, but something to that effect. Or, gosh, who was it? Was working out how gravity worked and they were shunned, right? Or you name it. I mean, people have always done this to some degree. We're no different than in Christopher Columbus's eras as far as how our brains work. We just think we're better because we wipe our asses and we have electricity.
Yeah. Well, and I think, too, is we have to be careful, I think, of what our kids learn in school, because I think this is what's happening, in my opinion, is, you know, fathers back in the day, you know, obviously worked, and then, you know, weekends took kids out on trips, and we got to go brand cattle, and we got to take care of our horses. We had responsibilities, and I think now it's so much work. Now the mom works and the dads work, and this very few times right there we're able to kind of mold our children a little bit to kind of believe these things. We're almost letting the public system do it, and I just, you know, that's where I'm looking at it, to where I see it now is like, I just don't think that's a very reliable way to mold your kids, where they understand the things that we went through and what this country stands for and what freedom truly is, and the opportunities we get. You know, everything now is just, it seems like they're just molding these kids to be disrespectful, and, you know, just entitlement is unbelievable.
Well, I mean, if you want to implement, and I mean, you could get down some serious rabbit holes in this sort of thing, and that doesn't take too long to get down them and really see why, or maybe how these things are real in this era that we're living in, where a couple of years ago, like, you couldn't get me to jump on a conspiracy for nothing. I don't know about you, but I was just like, no. Nope. Now, it's probably,
I think Trump truly did kind of wake a lot of us up to see what is going on with all this stuff. And, you know, like I said, it scares the crap out of me having kids. And Ken Bray said it best. He told my kids one time, he says, it ain't hard to be extraordinary these days. So really just, you know, and these guys, these military guys that I get to be around, and man, you get to see some self-discipline, and, you know, some of the stuff that these guys, and just how they coordinate with how they would do missions and stuff like that. And you just look at it and how you could apply it in your everyday life, and you apply it in a business and all these different things, and how to structure your kids and help them understand it. And, you know, it's a great way to, I've told everyone, you know, I've been at this thing for a few years now, and it's kind of taken over a little bit of my life, but I always say that, you know, it's a pretty good trade-off. For one, I get to help some of the baddest mother effers in the world. And then second is man, I'm getting a college education throughout all this. I'm learning how to market, learning how to sell, learning how business works. 501c3 when I was rodeo, and I thought that was C-3PO's brother from Star Wars. Like, they're telling me all these things that I need to do and get, and I have got no idea what they're talking about. And so just the things that I've gotten to learn throughout all this that, a team roper that making the NFR doesn't think about. And so it's been a crazy path that I've been on since I retired.
Yeah. Well, and we have so many things at our fingertips that even if we're on a hard grind, we can, like, my current schedule right now is out of control. Like, it's like a 4:30 to 9 p.m. thing every day, but from 4:30 to 5:30 or whatever, I'm able to, like, listen to a part of a book, and in the evening I can listen to a book, and if I'm on a good enough, like a safe horse, I can listen to something on a safe horse, and you can do all these different things. Cause
those ear pods now are so handy now.
Yeah, you could ride in AirPods, and you can, like, you can continually be getting better as a human being and preparing yourself for the next steps or getting good mindsets, and we have a lot of opportunity to be better.
I agree.
If you're rodeoing, you've got unlimited time to educate yourself in between rodeos.
The amount of time you spend in that rig, it's crazy.
That's time to learn.
Absolutely.
I mean, anytime you're driving behind the wheels, if you're just listening to music, I feel like you're wasting your freaking life.
Yeah. Yeah, my music now is to keep me awake.
Yeah, because when you get to that point.
There's only so much somebody talking to me after a while, but if I'm going to have to stay awake, that Kid Rock's coming on, man. It's coming in hot and loud. But other than that, like I say, if you're hitting that spot right there where you're wide awake, and, man, I still enjoy the long drives. Like, I love coming flying in with Jackie and put my ear pods in, and, I've got all these books that I listen to and research on about how the mind works, or, I've even been on Tony Robbins' stuff right there and had some year of coaching right there just to learn more about the mental game and business and things like that. And so, yeah, you said it perfectly. There's so many things right there out there that if you really wanted to grow, there's
a free resource for everything. And it's funny, when I was, like, really young, like 19, 20, because, I mean, I've always done some form of selling, whether that be myself to make something like this happen or a product in a business or whatever. It's like I used to listen to that Grant Cardone way back in the day. And
I enjoy him.
Like, if you want to learn how to invest in real estate, like, there's no one better.
I thought it was really good, too, to where I've always thought about that. I'm like, man, these guys, you could put them on the street and change their name and do all this stuff and take the risk. I promise you within a few years, they're going to be back, and I guarantee you they'll blow right by me. Because they know, and then I think he did it.
Yeah, he did it.
It was fascinating. He literally did that and figured out how to, I think he hit a certain number, many millions he would have in a certain amount of time where he had no resources, no nothing, and had to do it. And, man, it's like, say, if a guy's wanting to be a millionaire, that's a pretty good mentor right there to be able to get in front of.
Yeah, no, it is. And there's just you have to find a spot to do it in, and figure out whatever it is you want, whether that be team roping or what have you. But then you also have to think about the fact, and it pains me because there's people that I love who have had illustrious careers who didn't plan, and, man, it doesn't matter that they won anything. Now their life it's not great.
Well, and what I've seen a lot of times too is what made them great in the arena is the same thing that held them back out of the arena.
Yeah,
it was crazy to see that's what made them great. But then it's not. Yeah, it's you learn a lot. Like I said, I've learned a lot rodeoing. I've always said too that I've also learned a lot what not to do, which is also still learning. And when I've seen guys go down that path and made sure I learned from it and did it another way, and stuff, just like learning what to do with your money when you're done, and learning to live off too much credit. And it's like my first year I made the NFR, I bought my first piece of land. I took all that money and I bought land. And then the second year I built a barn. Third year I built a house, but I didn't do it until I had the money.
Right.
Because I was so scared of credit and losing everything. And so now I've learned how to use credit to also make more money too. So, but
yeah. I mean, it's a different
stage
about,
of life.
It is. And you can leverage things totally different. If you listen to the right guy, they can show you how to do it, but you have to have some of those assets to leverage before you can utilize the credit.
Yeah.
It's tricky. Life is really tricky, and that's one of the reasons that the show is so important to me, and making it go as close to mainstream as something from the Western world can. That's always been the goal. That's why I bring those other people on. It's because I think there's so much value under a cowboy hat that the rest of the world needs. That's there's no difference between me sitting here with you or if I were to sit here with a Michael Jordan. You know, he might be more brooding, more intense, and if we, you know, made some type of a bet, I might get hit, but you know, that's Michael Jordan. But there's so much value under a cowboy hat that I think the world needs. And for me, I think it's one of those things that is going to combat this bad that we've been talking about that's going on. Is the more people with the mindsets that you have, the principles that you have that are out there in the world actually doing something that's not just self-serving, I think that's what saves us.
Well, and I tell you what you're doing with this show that I truly enjoy is, you know, when like I said, I've listened to this podcast with Clinton on there, and just hearing a different perspective from a guy like that in the Western industry, because it is as hard, you know, loving, drinking, fighting cowboys was the motto when I first started rodeoing, and now it's turned into a business. Yeah. And so still some of the business is still, I think they're still kind of learning a little bit, but you know, the way Clinton and you guys broke that down, that got my wheels spinning. That was a great podcast. And so I love what you guys are doing with this, and, you know, getting different perspectives in here to get just some creativity sparked with somebody. And, you know, like these rodeo guys, they get plenty of time to listen. So this is great. It gives them something to listen to and get perspective in so many different ways. And so you guys are blazing a great path. I think you guys are doing a great job.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think the same for what you're doing. The whole selfless pursuit thing and doing things, because nobody takes care of our guys. When I say our guys, I mean our military personnel. Yeah. You know what kind of a bad son of a bitch you have to be a Green Beret, a Navy SEAL, a Army Ranger, to be any SF Special Forces guy, even just a Marine.
Just research the training that you have to do just to make it through the training.
At least what it used to be. Did you see the thing about the Navy SEALs, how they were calling it like trying to get rid of the standard that the SEALs have for their training? And all these SEALs come out and say, fucker, that's what made us.
Exactly right.
That's not torture. That's what had to be done.
When you get put in those, and like I said, I'm speaking from these guys telling me the things that you have to learn how to endure in war. You have to be at a high level, and you can't dumb the training down. That's the reason why we've, at this point in time, still some of the baddest countries and baddest people like fighting for us is the training.
Yeah,
you're training these guys to be ready for any situation that happens, and you dumb that down, and man, that's a scary place to put our situation in as a country. But
we're letting the wrong people. I mean, think about the focus and the time and the attentiveness that it must have taken people to create those training programs, to create the strategies of war and the way that we implement them, to build the machines that we used to keep this country safe.
After that first year I had the AMC event, some of my guys, they'd sent me some, because I was driving Cadence around because I was retiring, so I was hauling her around to rodeos and some of the bigger opens, and they would send me, well, on your trip, watch this and watch that, and that way you kind of have an understanding a little bit of like the World War II guys or the Vietnam guys, and one of them was Band of Brothers. That was a great movie.
It is a good movie.
Great movie, and just you could see how when these guys come back, they miss that camaraderie that they had when you're literally fighting beside someone that's literally watching your back and you're watching theirs, and then they get out here and then it's different. Because I've had some military guys that I've known for a long time that didn't even know they were in the military. Yeah. And then they showed up in my rope and I'm like, I didn't even know you were military.
Isn't that interesting that it's not everybody, but we tend to try to lead with whatever accomplishment we have, right? Because we have these fragile little egos as people. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you almost feel like you have to tell people what your merit is when you meet them. Something I used to struggle with. There's an insecurity. Like, I got to tell you that I'm actually somebody and somebody valuable, so so you'll talk to me. Or, it's a childish mindset, but it's something that I used to carry, and I see it in a lot of people. Yeah. Or like the rich guy who always have to lead that he's a rich guy.
Mm-hmm. Insecurity, yeah.
The military guys, I've met so many of them at the highest level down to just regular guys. I mean, untold numbers of them, and I've never once had one do that. Mm-hmm. They just don't.
Well, when I ended up having these guys, and like I said, when I seen this guy that I knew for a long time, I didn't even know he's in the military, and he's roping with a guy, I'm like, I didn't even know you're military. That's awesome. And what was weird was I've known this guy, and when I seen him around his guys, completely different guy.
Really?
Yeah, I've never seen that side of him. And I guess it's probably a little bit of, I guess if I was thrown in the corporate world for long enough, then I got to see the guys that I used to rope with or my buddies again. You're going to throw me probably in a different environment, but it was cool to see that environment that they were comfortable being around.
Yeah.
And you're right. A lot of them, you say, my dad was a Marine, and you couldn't hardly even get anything out of him. But I never really pressed much. But when they had me, so that the Band of Brothers was more on the war, I think, in Europe against the Nazis and stuff like that. And then they had me watch a movie called The Pacific, and it was more of the Marines. I think, in Japan, that one was gruesome. That was a gruesome war. That was a gruesome over there. And I think they called it the death stare when them guys would come back, and they was literally like you tell, like they were looking straight, but like nobody was home. But what was so interesting is I wished my dad was still alive, because when I watched that, he talked about a lot of those places. He never broke anything down, obviously, but being in Okinawa and where you're stationed, and I think Camp Pendleton, and it was awesome because all the places they talked about, he had been at a certain point. 'Cause I remember him kind of talking about like one of the places he had been, and I was like, man, that'd have been awesome to be able to watch that with him and kind of get to know some of the places he had been, and when that time was. But yeah, so it was great to be able to see like a little bit more about our history, with what wars they fought and what some of these guys I got to see. Some of these guys, man, they struggle with the PTSD is, I think some of them don't trust themselves when they're sleeping around their families because something takes over and they don't trust themselves and they end up shooting themselves.
Yeah.
And that's sad. I mean, we lost 2 Navy SEALs that are supposed to come to our branding this year and killed themselves. And, so that's when we kind of started thinking, what could we do for these guys almost quarterly to just kind of give them something to look forward to. It doesn't always have to be an event, but just something where we can appreciate them and get their minds off this stuff. So.
Yeah, I think it's one of the greatest failures of our country that there's not a brilliant infrastructure set up for our military. It's because we have the wrong people in charge and have for a long time. We allow the wrong people in charge, and that's why somebody like DeSantis is doing so.
He's been kicking rear, man.
So well.
That's a stud.
And
I think he was Navy, wasn't he?
A Navy SEAL.
He was a SEAL?
He was a SEAL, yeah. And, if you're a super democratic person, like you can set your politics aside and appreciate like what that takes. And then to step into a government leadership position.
Step into a role where you're applying exactly what you learned.
And it works.
It's very effective. He's one of the best governors we have. Him and that Naomi from South Dakota, those guys are rock stars, I think. It works.
And if we could get this bureaucracy and this disgusting money thing, it's in human history, but if we could somehow in this perfect, real utopian world, not this liberal neo-communist utopian world, but a real one where people who serve our country have somewhere to be, somewhere to go, something set up, not just a half-baked education and $8 an hour.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And people don't even like to hire military people.
That makes no sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
Because I'm telling you, some of these guys, man, they're some of the sharpest guys, obviously disciplined. Is what you were kind of touching on too was, like I said, I kind of did this. I've got no idea what I'm doing. I mean,
right.
I'm still as a cowboy and a roper, and like I said, when I panicked last year and raised over $115,000, I panicked. Like, this thing's taken off. It's bigger than me. Limited amount of education here. I'm still as a cowboy, and so some of the guys tell me about a board and things like that, and so I did. I panicked. I called Ken Bray. I said, "Man, I need your help. I need your guidance."
That's the guy to help.
And I called Keith Mundy with American Hats and got them on a board. We got a four-star general, General Mosley. I had another Marine buddy of mine that helped me kind of coordinate this stuff, and a real good friend of mine that pretty high up on the J.P. Morgan Chase banking system, where somebody knows money, somebody knows how to represent the military guys, and there's someone that knows Western industry.
Guys, yeah.
And so in that way, I kind of like, all right, make sure that guide me in the correct ways, because I've built this thing to where it's just a way to say thank you, but now all of a sudden you got 501c3s and taxes and all this other stuff. And so that helped me out a lot, because one of the core things that this thing's real, and I don't want to lose that. Like some of the guys that kept coming to me, even just during my clinics that I was doing in my backyard, said, "Man, this is real." I said, "Well, I appreciate that." He goes, "It's not corporate." I said, "I don't know what that means. You're gonna have to explain to me what do you mean by corporate?" They said, "Well, there's so many things that like people try to help us, and people try to give us these things that we can go do, and these
like
trips,
the Wounded Warrior programs, yeah."
And he says, like, we'll pay for our own money and go out there and get a photo shoot with the guys who donated all the money for somebody else that's getting it. And they just want us to kind of be there for basically a photo shoot,
right,
where they can talk about all the good things they've done that we don't even know who this guy is, where the money's going. And it's basically we pay our own money and drive over here and get a photo shoot with this guy so we can take credit for it and leave.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, I get that. He's like, man, you dedicate your time. Like, you truly care for us. Like, we can see it. And, you donate your whole place and your time. And it's like, that means a lot to us. And, like, we can truly feel that, like, you're doing it for a good reason. And they had a saying, I forgot what it was called, but they said, you're truly an American worth fighting for. I said, what? If there's a job title that I would love to say, then that would be that one. So that was pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a fantastic event, and, we're called to serve our fellow man. And when you're a cowboy and an esteemed cowboy, that's one hell of a way to do it.
Yeah.
So it's something.
And this year's going to be a lot of fun too. We're able to take it to the Cowtown Coliseum this year. So we've been partnered with them. The NFR Showdown will be at the Cowtown Coliseum. The military guys are going to get to do their grand entry behind the branch flags.
It'll feel a lot better in there than
it'll
NRS
be pretty tight. It'll be pretty tight. And then we've also added a ranch rodeo this year, because trying to contain these guys and teach them how to rope is kind of almost like trying to get a bodybuilder to make a 6-foot putt. It's not really the same wiring.
Yep.
That makes sense, because when you get a horse going and the adrenaline gets it going, it's hard to pull them off.
Yeah.
And so we got a ranch rodeo for them this year. We're in a stray gathering. We're trying to get a 4-man team, 2 military guys and 2 pro guys, and just something fun where they get to just go chase something. And so that'll be fun. We'll take the 2 fastest times from NRS into that as well, and that way there's a little bit more entertainment to it, kind of just a team roping. And then building homes for heroes will come in and we'll present a home. We've also reached out and partnered up with Brotherhood for the Fallen, so it's law enforcement, and so they help take care of families that if you're a police officer, you've been murdered on the job. And so I think there's quite a bit of time after they've been killed to where it actually comes in and starts helping them, benefiting the family. I think I heard like 6 months.
Yeah.
So like funeral cost, rent, like I think everything's frozen. So if the wife doesn't work and the police officer got killed, like there's no more income coming for a little bit. And so these guys come in and help to make sure that groceries are taken care of and the family's taken care of. And because that was one of the biggest things that hit me personally was, man, if something's ever happened to me, just to make sure my family's taken care of. And that's why I wanted to partner with Building Homes for Heroes, just, man, make sure these guys have a home. We raised $115,000 last year and was able to help an Army specialist, I think, Jonathan Merchant. We helped build him a home. And, they can do a lot of things. You can figure out a lot of different ways to make money, but at least if you have a home, your family's taken care of.
Yep.
And so that's something that I would know if I died, that I believe the Western industry would make sure that my family and kids, they can make money, but as long as that home ain't taken from them, that makes me feel a lot better.
Absolutely.
So that's where we try to step in and make sure that these guys are taken care of. Like I said, the government ain't going to do it. I ain't going to go try to be a Navy SEAL at my age, and I got way too many skeletons in my closet to run for governor. And so this is the only way I know how to kind of make an impact.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that being said, I've been saying this for like 2-3 years now, but I want people from the rodeo industry or the Western industry who have the merit, the education, and the right voice to run for office. Get in there. Get in at the local level. Do things. Like, if you want change, you can't just bitch about it. You got to be about it. You got to do
It's
something.
no different than rodeo. If you want to freaking change something, you can't sit in a trailer and bitch about it.
Nope.
And, I think I love what you're saying, like DeSantis and stuff like that, getting more military guys in the office that are disciplined and know how this country works. And, but man, just like I said, be able to get the Cowtown Coliseum and then Pam and Billy Minnick, they've stepped in and helped me a little bit with it too. So we're gonna help kind of structure a gala that night after the rodeo.
That'd be awesome.
They're at that 81 club,
or 81, yeah.
Yeah, and we've got a bunch of auction items. We got I think AccuFire threw in a bunch of high-powered scopes.
Really?
And one's even night vision.
Wow.
And then also a lesson with Tim Kilner and another guy who's one of the 2 most prolific snipers, I think, under Chris Kyle. So you get a lesson with those guys on shooting, and then I think a hog hunt that night. We got like 10 or 12 auction items like at that level that are just you can get on a NASCAR. Somebody donated a deal. We can go out there, Texas Motor Speedway, and drive a NASCAR. So we've got some cool stuff right there. And my goal this year is blow $200,000 out of the water. So, And then, like I say, I usually always like starting with long coals and kind of work my way smaller. But, I think it's a good year 3 goal. Eventually, we'd love to get to 500,000 and work our way where we outgrow Cowtown and keep getting bigger and bigger and raise more awareness. But to be live on the Cowboy Channel, I think this year is going to, where a lot of guys can see this and just hopefully we can capture the emotion of what it is for these guys when they're there. Last year, just watching the Mill Pro where the military guys got to rope with the pro guys. I mean, it was, how you've watched steer wrestling before in slack where everyone's rooting for each other. We don't see that in team roping quite like the bulldogging does. And it was literally like a bulldogging there, man. Everybody was hooping and hollering when somebody caught or whoever won the roping. And it was just you could feel that this was more than just a roping at that point in time. And it's a great event. So.
Absolutely. So do people donate? Is that so? Where can people go?
So AmericanMilitaryCelebration.com. There's ways right there you can donate. There's ways you can see where the auction items are at. We have our silent auction items. They'll be online, and then like I said, it'll be live on the Cowboy Channel, or you can buy tickets and come and watch it there at the Cowtown Coliseum, November 5th at 1 p.m.
Selling tickets on your website. Is that where you get the tickets?
Tickets are on the website. The gala's on the website, so there's more information on that.
Absolutely. Well, Charlie, we've been talking about doing this for a long time and getting you in here, and
and I felt bad for calling you because I'm not somebody who calls and like, hey, come listen to this. But I'm like, I want the world to be able to see what we can do for these guys, and what I think you've done with this podcast is just extraordinary. And I was like, I think I can speak for these guys on your show and be able to get in front of a lot of people, and you've done a good job with your show. And I thought it'd be fun to be able to come in and see you guys and meet you guys too.
Hell yeah. No, I'm so glad you did. And, if it has to do with helping military people, I think anybody who watches this knows I'm going to jump feet first into using any platform we've got to help with that. And, I'm super excited about it, and I'm sure it's going to be one of the biggest things going for a really long time. So you're the right guy to do it, I can tell.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, thanks for coming in, Charlie.
You bet. Enjoyed meeting you guys.
Absolutely. This has been The Gauge, hosted by me, Chance Conrado, produced and edited by our guy, Ty Yeager. Shout out to the executive producers, Dustin Pointer and Cody Denton. Marketing and content produced by Riley Chone. Make sure to rate and review this podcast, as well as follow The Gauge on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And make sure to subscribe to The Gauge wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys next time.